Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, thank you all for coming this afternoon. It's interesting because there are not just faces here that I know and have known for many, many years, but there are also people here who are perhaps coming to this service for the first time. So please forgive me if I take a little moment to just explain the significance of this afternoon to our community. I was asked that question this morning on the radio. What is the significance of the Hammond Memorial? And that's an easy question to answer, because the significance of the Hammond Memorial and this service is that this is our annual opportunity to come together as a community and focus and reflect upon the appalling tragedy that unfolded on our island from 1940 to 1945. And I think you have to start with the beginning. And I can't begin to imagine what it must have been like to have 2 hours' notice to pack a bag, either let your animals, your domestic animals, roam free or kill them, and then parade down at the harbour. And you were then told that you would be leaving your home, your island, and you would not see it again for a period of 5 years. That must have been incredibly difficult. But I'm sure that throughout that time they were away, they focused on when they could come back. And I think that provided them with the strength to endure what they had to and then return to their island. But what we're here today to talk about is what happened in their absence. And what happened in their absence were acts against humanity. People were brought here and literally worked to death. The average age of the person that died here was 26. And over that period of 5 years, whilst they were here, the majority of them suffered inhumane conditions and lost their lives. So what today is about remembering the sacrifice that they made and acknowledging that we must never allow that sort of behaviour to become acceptable. So in doing what we do today, we recognise our responsibility to the souls who gave their lives. And it is testament to our community that so many of us gather on what is a really, really important day in our calendar. This day and Homecoming Day form a very considerable part of the history of this island and of this community. And it is particularly relevant this year because we know that imminently a report will be published by Lord Pickles, which is the outcome of an academic review of as much available evidence that they have been able to put together globally. And this report, I hope, will deliver a degree of clarity around the number of people who lost their lives. Now, we know that there has been much debate over the years around this figure. But I think when we are told that this is the best evidence that we are ever going to get, then I think it's incumbent upon us to accept that and to move forward as a community. Because the attention that we have been the focus of in the last 5 years has been uncomfortable as a community. We are a small, tightly knit community, and we have always approached these challenges together. So I earnestly hope that, firstly, the report will give us a degree of clarity, and secondly, that it will allow a degree of closure. Not closure around how we feel about what happened and how we deal with that going forward. And there are things which we will be doing which will help to reinforce those messages. But what we need is to be allowed, in many ways, to focus on our lives here, but always remembering in the back of our minds that element of suffering. And I personally think that that is part of the DNA of the island. And the responsibility on all of us is that we never forget that, and that we keep that flame burning. And, you know, it's a pleasure to see students from the school here today, because they are going to have to take responsibility, and they are going to have to continue to make this a really important day in our calendar, and to ensure that we never forget the sacrifice. And finally, I was preparing for the publication of this report recently, and I read the book that was written by Mr. Panchev, who was responsible for the initial report into the events here. But he concludes his book in what I think is a very important way. He talks about the people that lost their lives here. And he says, they did not die because the fortunes of war blew them up. They did not die in defense of something dear to them, or elect to take a risk that turned out disastrous for them. They died because they were arbitrarily freighted to Alderney willy-nilly and starved and worked to death. And the book concludes that in 1978, the poet John Mowat paid a visit to Alderney. He wrote a poem which, with great sensitivity, captures both past suffering and the healing qualities of the island. On the Longy Road, the ghosts freeze. They have done their time. With the gale, the siren will cease. A new sound is wetting the wind. Out there on the fort flows the clean wine death left behind. In waves there is laughter, on the breeze a clear song. The causeway shines. We have raised the siege. Thank you.